welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to be making something that's kind of like, it's like a very specific gift item for someone, but at the same time, I think you could probably use it for anything for anyone. That was a little confusing, wasn't it? Today, we're going to be making the clips bag, and this comes to us from Sewn Ideas. So, as the name implies, this is meant to hold your clips. These little clips we have, it's the clips bag. I think that's the purpose of it. It's an adorable, tiny little bag though, okay? So, I did not put clips in mine. Let me just show you. This little bag, it has a little tiny handle. There's no crossbody, although that would be the cutest little crossbody, wouldn't it? Just a little tiny handle up top. We have a flap right here. We have a nice gusset going around, a basic back panel, but the front panel has two little zippers. You open these up. Let's see if I can do this without spilling everything. And I put a bunch of sweets in there. These are just little candies. So I thought this would be so fun because this is, okay, there's so much you could do with this. Yes, you could put the clips in here, keep it in your sewing room, and just use it, you know, so for me, I have like something like this. Instead of this, this is much cuter, and then when you're done, you just zip it up. They're all there. You don't have to worry about, you know, if I bump this, they're gonna go everywhere. But if this is zipped up and I bump it, no problem. But I was thinking, with the holidays coming up, fill it with treats, fill it with candies and sweets and chocolates and things like that, and then you just zip it up and you gift it to someone, and how fun is that? Because for me, as this is already full of my treats, this is like a sewing room snack bag. This is just my little like secret bag where it looks cute, you know, I can put it over here, it's nice decoration, but it's also got my sweets in it. So I will tell you that this pattern actually has a couple magnets installed, which is a really unique way to do it. You actually sew them in. They're not magnetic snaps like we've done before. I am skipping that today because I don't have the magnets, but I did want to mention it to you because I had a hard time wrapping my head around what is the purpose of these magnets until I actually went through the entire pattern and built the bag. You install one magnet on the bottom gusset right here, right where the seam is, and it's behind the fabric, so it's like a hidden magnet. And then you install another magnet on the flap, and the point of that is so that the flap stays open. So when you fold this flap back like this, the magnets will hold it open like that, and you don't have, you know, you're not fighting the flap all the time. So I highly encourage you to give that a try. It seems very simple. You just pretty much use it with the foam, and the magnet just sews in like that. Again, I'm not going to show you how to do it because I don't have the magnets on hand. For my purpose, as a little snack bag, I don't really need it, but it is something I encourage you to try. So thank you as always to Sewn Ideas for allowing me to use your patterns in my tutorials. You guys love Sewn Ideas over here so much. There's so many unique ideas. I mean, so many unique patterns. They're all amazing, from clear pouches to dog walking bags to like more elaborate bags. We've done a lot. We've done a lot of Sewn Ideas, and this was a newer pattern that I just loved this teeny tininess of it. This might look challenging because it is sharp curves, things like that. It actually isn't. And I do highly encourage you, if you're a beginner, don't use vinyl for anything other than this and the handle. Okay, this little flap and the handle. I would not suggest vinyl for the gusset or for the main panels if you're new to this. Because it is going to be more challenging. I will be using in the tutorial today quilt cotton for the gusset, for the back, for the front panel, and I will be using foam stabilizer. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's very easy. It's great. It's nice and soft and squishy. I wouldn't alter the pattern in any way from what they suggested. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. I will have timestamps because there are just a couple things. There's not a whole lot. There's no lining pockets. There's no credit card pockets. There's not a whole lot to this bag. It's really just build the front panel and then gusset, back panel, put it all together. It's pretty simple, but I will walk you through each step, and I will have timestamps for each one of those. So if you're just wondering, like, but how do I deal with that corner on the gusset? I'll have a timestamp down below for that. All right, guys, let's get started. So because this is such a small project, it is a great scrappy project. So I will be using little bits from all this material. I'm going to use a little bit of this material for the flap because I really love that design to kind of stand out. I'm going to be using some of this pretty berry fabric for the gusset, and then for like the sides of the front panel and then the back panel, I'm going to use this really fun red gold fabric. Just make it scrappy. Use something for every different piece. It's so fun to do it like that. For the handle and that little contrast flap on the front, I'll be using this faux velvet. You might have seen me use this in another video. I love it. I think it's just so easy to work with and it's so fun. I thought with the holiday theme, this is going to be great. For For the lining, I will be using this water-resistant canvas. Water-resistant canvas is more lightweight than waterproof canvas, but it does not require any interfacing. It's very easy to work with. I highly recommend you use this, especially if you're a beginner. Remember, anything that is quilt cotton, so these three materials right here, anything that is quilt cotton, it will need to be interfaced with woven interfacing. So I love sew fuse, you guys know that. So I just use some sew fuse for any quilt cotton pieces. You're gonna need more than you think too. We'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm also using sew-in foam. So this is not an adhesive foam, and how we attach this is actually really clever. I love it. So instead of sewing this foam into the seams and then having those really bulky seams that we have to fight and give us a challenge on those curves, what we actually do is we cut these down smaller and then we sandwich this between the woven interfacing. So we'll go over that when we go through the pattern pieces, but I just wanted you to know that even with all of that, I only use scraps. I mean, these are not scraps, obviously. I cut little bits out from these, but for my interfacing, I just use scraps of foam and scraps of my woven interfacing for everything. It's a very scrappy project, I mean, all around. But again, if you want to pull out all your nicest stuff like I did and then cut out teeny tiny pieces, that's also a great option. So there's not a whole lot of bells and whistles on this. We do have a couple rivets for the handle. It is optional, but I will be using the rivets because I love rivets. So just a couple of those. You'll have two very small zippers. Each needs to be 6 inches or longer. And then you have 2 zipper pulls. I encourage you to have fun with this. I mean, my zipper pulls are different. This is little holiday ones. I got a little reindeer and a little Santa Claus. I think it's gonna be really cute. I have my bag tag as always for my makes. And then I'll be using this for the first time, which I'm very excited about it. This is called Bound. And this is water resistant Oxford, and it's already cut for me. So it's already a 1 inch wide, water resistant Oxford, doesn't fray. A lot of times when I'm using water resistant canvas or waterproof canvas, I will cut my own binding. We do have just one edge here where we're gonna be using binding, but this is already done. I'll have a link down below. It sells out fast. If you can get your hands on it, I highly recommend you do it. But this is really cool. I'm really excited to play with this today. So here's all the other stuff. As always, lots of clips. And then, you know, once you make a little clip bag, you might not have to use this little brown thing anymore. And then the needle I'll be using today is a Microtex 8012 needle. That's just my go-to for everything, honestly. For the top thread, I have a Tex 35 weight variegated thread, which is very fun. It's red and green and white. It's gonna be pretty. And then for the bobbin, I always use a Gutermann thread. I don't use my Tex thread in the bobbin because of tension. You can do it. It's just you really have to make sure you increase the tension when you're winding the bobbin, or else you're gonna have a mess. So just to save the headache, I always like to use regular old Gutermann from Joann's in the bobbin. A good pair of scissors is going to be helpful today. These are my Kai scissors, which are my favorite. They are Kai 7230. A good hole punch for punching the holes for our rivets, a rivet press, and the dies that go with it. A lighter for cleaning up loose edges. Some double-sided tape might be helpful today. I don't remember if I needed this the first time, but it's always good to have it. Vinyl marking tool, air erasing marking tool, just something you can use on whatever fabric you have. If you have a really dark fabric, you might also want a chalk marking tool so you can see it. A seam ripper, because I make a lot of mistakes. I used this a lot in the first one because I didn't read the instructions correctly. And then a stiletto. Stiletto is going to be a must-have, in my opinion, for these curves. This is going to make sewing those curves so much easier. So if you don't have a stiletto, highly encourage you to get one. Okay, so let's work our way through the pattern pieces. First, pattern piece 1A and 1. So from pattern piece 1, this is your main body piece. This is what you're going to be cutting out your material from. So for mine, I have a quilt cotton backing, and then I have a layer of quilt cotton over the back of this, and then I have a cut of lining. Anything that is quilt cotton needs to have the woven interfacing. So I have 1 layer of woven interfacing on this panel here, but I don't have anything on my waterproof canvas because it doesn't need it. You're going to cut 2 pieces of the woven interfacing for this one panel. One is going to be to attach to the material to prevent fraying, and the second piece of woven interfacing is going to be to sandwich in this piece of foam. So you see we have a 1A cut here. This is your foam. You see how it's smaller than the main piece? You cut the foam smaller, you center it on the back of your exterior back panel that has the woven interfacing already on it, center it there, and then take that second piece of woven interfacing and lay it on top and fuse it on. I'm going to show you how to do it on one of the pieces, but I did prep a lot of these already because prep time does take the most time with this pattern today. So you see how my foam is just nice and sandwiched in here? That way I don't have to sew it into the seams. It's going to be a lot easier to work with. So this is all for pattern piece 1. For pattern piece 2, we have that center feature panel. So I've got this fun fabric here. This fabric already has the woven interfacing on it. I have another piece of woven interfacing cut that I'm going to use to sandwich in the foam. And then I have my lining cut. As you can see, pattern piece 2A is a smaller cut, and it is a foam cut. And we're just going to, well, not on the front, but we're going to sandwich it on the back, just like that. I'll show you how to do that. We have to do one more thing to this foam before we get to that step though. So we're going to have similar for pattern piece 3. First, we have our lining cuts, no interfacing on these if you're using water-resistant canvas. And then we have our exterior cuts. Our exterior cuts do have woven interfacing on them. And then we have the smaller 3A foam cuts already centered on the back and then sandwiched with another piece of woven interfacing. So you see they're just kind of hidden in there. Pattern piece 4 is the top front. This is that nice little decorative flap that covers the flap. And then we have another cut of our vinyl, or for me, my velvet. This is gonna be for the handle. And then we have 2 cuts that are longer. One is our exterior piece, one is our lining piece. The exterior piece already has its foam cut sandwiched in between. There are no pattern pieces for this, but there are measurements. Just remember your foam is a smaller cut. Now, if you don't want to mess with the foam and the sandwiching, you don't have to. You can use Decoville Light here. That would be fine as well. You could just, instead of foam cuts, just use Decoville Light cuts and just fuse it on. And then you don't need that extra piece of woven interfacing, and you'll still have nice structure. It just won't be very squishy. So if you're using the magnet, you are going to want to have another small cut of Decoville Light. There is a pattern piece for it, and it goes right on your foam. I'm not doing the magnet, so I don't need the Decoville Light today. You'll notice there are 2 stitching lines marked on pattern piece 2A. You're going to want to transfer those to your foam. So what I do is I just kind of lay my pattern piece on top of my foam like this, and then I just mark on the sides on the right and the left where those stitch lines are. And then I'll just use a ruler or a straight edge to connect them. There we go. Now what we want to do is actually just go stitch right on top of these stitch lines. That's just going to make this flap bend easier, especially if you're using the magnet, because then it will easily attach to the other magnet and it won't like fling back up so much. If you're not using the magnet, I don't know how necessary this step is, but I like to do it anyways. So you can see when you do that, it just makes it a lot easier to bend this and fold this. Again, really useful if you're using the magnet, but I also find it's just useful for the bag in general. So now that this is ready to go, let's fuse it on to our front flat piece. This is how you would do it for all of the pieces that have the foam. Again, if you want to use Decoville Light, you can do that. But if you're using foam, what you want to do is you want to take the exterior piece of material and lay it right side down, wrong side up. Take your foam cut and lay it over the back side of your fabric and center it. And then grab your second piece of woven interfacing and lay it over the foam, lining up all the edges. If it's a little bit bigger, off sides, whatever, that's okay. So we're gonna take our iron, and I actually just like to push it on top and then smush it down. That foam will smush down. So you can work on going around the edges and stuff like that, but I actually find the easiest thing is to just push this down and fuse it down like that first, and then I'll go around the edges. So now I'll take it to the side and I'll just make sure I go around the edges really well and just panini this in there. So to make sure it's nice and tucked in there and it's not going to escape. You can give it a good press from the front as well. And then if you have any overhang of your woven interfacing, go ahead and trim that off. We don't need it. There we go. Now our flap is all ready to go with the foam smushed in there already. And if you have a magnet, your magnet should be right up here towards the top. So if you haven't already, cut your zipper tape down to at least 6 inches on each of these and add your zipper pulls, and we're going to attach them to our flap. So grab both your exterior and your lining cuts. Take your lining cut and lay it right side up. And then we're going to take one zipper and we're going to lay our zipper right side up with the zipper closing going up towards the top, and just lay it over your lining flap along the left side. Let's grab some clips and clip this in place. And you want to have a good amount of overhang on the top and the bottom. Neither one of these edges should be lined up with the top or the bottom of the lining material. So I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. Again, just make sure the zipper when closing goes up. All right, once you have them clipped down, let's go baste along the outer clipped edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I went ahead and I just stitched over the top and bottom edges of my zipper tape just so it stays together. It's not that big of a deal right now, but it's just going to help me out a little bit. So now take your panel with the zippers and lay it so the zippers are right side up, and then take your main exterior panel and lay it right side down over those zippers. Look towards the sides so you can make sure you're lining up your exterior panel with your lining panel on the top and the bottom edges. And just clip together along the edges with these zippers. So the pattern emphasizes that when we sew along these edges, we want to sew as close to the zipper tape as possible. That's going to prevent the bag from bulging later. So get that zipper foot on and just really get the zipper foot riding right along the zipper tape. We want to get as close to these zipper teeth as possible. So we're going to sew along these edges. It's probably, it could be anywhere between a 3/8 inch seam allowance to a bigger seam allowance than that. Okay, if you haven't already stitched over the bottom edge of the zipper tape, go ahead and do that. Pull your zippers down so they are either in the middle of the panel or down below, just not up here. So I accidentally cut off the top edges of my zipper tape, which I did not mean to do, but it is what it is. What you want to do now is pull your zipper pulls down all the way below the bottom of the panel, and then pull down the tape that has not been sewn yet. So just like that. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch along this top short edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So remember, the unsewn zipper tape side is down below, so we're only stitching the fabric and the zipper teeth that have already been stitched down. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now you should have it just like this, again with these other unsewn zipper tapes hanging down below. And now let's trim this corner down. And if you still have your zipper tape overhanging over here from the side that is sewn in, go ahead and trim that down as well. Sadly, I jumped the gun on that one. But let's trim these corners down just like that. And now let's flip this flap out so the fabric is right side out. Be gentle with this, you don't want to rip anything. If you have any sort of a turning tool, you can use that, or you can kind of gently, not pull hard, but very gently pull on the zipper teeth. And that will also help round out these corners. Isn't that so cute? Look at that. Oh, that's so cute. Okay. So now we're going to top stitch along all the edges of this middle flap here at 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so this is what it should look like, except your outer edge zipper tape should be taller than mine because you should not have cut those down. I think we'll be okay still, but we'll see. So now you're going to take a ruler or some sort of straight edge, because what we want to do is we want to line it up along the bottom edge of the center panel and mark on the outer parts of our zipper tape a line that just extends from that bottom edge. So for that, I'm using an air erasing marker, and you can see this bottom line here. It's just like as if this fabric were to continue going, there's the line. We're gonna need that for placement on the side panels. So grab your front side panels, the lining and the exterior. So take your lining panel and lay it right side up, and it should be like this. The outer edges should be going towards the outside and the rounded edges are going towards the center. And we're gonna lay our zipper so that our zipper teeth are right side up, right on top of that lining piece. So I'm starting over here on the right. So right on top of the lining piece, and when I hold it up on the side like this, the bottom corner of my lining piece needs to line up with that mark on my zipper tape. So just like that. Don't let it go further down, don't let it go higher up. It needs to just match up right with that line. And now let's clip the zipper tape and the lining together. So now let's do the same thing on the other side. Again, the lining piece is right side up, and we're going to just take the zipper, which is also right side up, and lay it right on top. And then lift it up from the side and line up the bottom corner of our lining with that line that we marked on our zipper tape and clip together. So the zipper tape is wrong side against the right side of the lining. Now I'm going to go baste along both of these edges at 1/8 inch seam allowance. So once those are basted on, grab your exterior panels, and we're going to lay those right side down. So again, the straight edges need to match up with the edge of the zipper tape, and just one by one we can do this. We're going to lay our exterior right side down against the right side of the zipper, and then lift it up on its edge and clip these together, lining it up with the lining panel that's already basted onto the zipper tape. So all the way from the bottom to the top. I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. And now, just like we did with the center, we're going to sew as close as we can to the zipper teeth, about a 3/8 inch seam allowance or bigger, just right against the zipper tape. Just sew these down. All right, now that these are sewn together, we're going to flip the lining and the exteriors back, wrong sides together, and then grab some clips and clip them along their rounded edges Do this for both sides. And now we want to top stitch right along the zipper tape and then also base stitch around the edge, all at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. How stinking cute is that? It's so cheerful. I just love it. Okay, so now you're supposed to cut the little triangles of fabric over here. So again, you're supposed to have longer zipper tape at the top. It shouldn't look like mine. You should have followed the instructions and not have cut these off. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of just lift up the material and trim down the little dog ears just like that, but leave the zipper tape. Don't cut the zipper tape. There we go. And since my zipper tape is so short over here, I am going to just melt the edges of my zipper tape to make sure it doesn't fray too much on me. All right, so now let's flip this over so we're looking at the lining side. You can pull your zipper all the way up like that, and then take your main body panel and lay it over it, and it should be the same size. If it's a little big, a little small, I think it's fine. And we're going to transfer some marks. So we want to transfer the quarter marks on the bottoms and the top. So there's 4 marks. We want to transfer all 4 of them. So I'm just using an air erasing marker for that. You could also use a chalk marker or a vinyl pen. This is just going to be helpful when we do the gusset. Okay, and we're going to leave this one because we can't get there, which is fine. So I have 1, 2, 3, 3 little marks, 2 on the sides, 1 on the bottom, just like that. Now let's put this to the side. So now we want to mark a midpoint long going along the back piece of your handle. This is kind of an odd sized cut, so what I like to do is just fold my material wrong sides together and just pinch, and you can trim there or use a marking tool just to mark the midpoint. So I'm going to do this for both short edges, again on the back of my material, and then I'll use a ruler to connect these two and draw a straight line between them. Okay, for this one I'm actually going to grab my super sticky tape, and we're going to mark 3/4 of an inch in from each short edge along our middle line we just made. So then grab some of your double-sided tape and run it right along the center line between those marks, those 3/4 of an inch marks, so not all the way to the end. This tape is helpful, but not when we sew over it. It can be a bit of a mess to sew on top of, so we want to use it, but we don't want to hurt our needle. It looks like in the pattern they use 1/2 an inch wide double-sided tape. I'm using 1/4 of an inch wide. I think I'll be okay. So I'm going to remove the paper, and honestly on this velvet I don't know how good this is. I don't know how much this is going to help, but that's okay, because if we can't just use the tape, we'll also use clips. So I'm going to roll this back. I'm folding the long edges wrong sides together to meet the raw edge to that middle line, and I'm adding it to the tape, but I'm also going to use clips. I only used clips for the vinyl on the first bag I made, and it was fine. So if you don't have access to tape that's strong enough for whatever material you're using for this, you should be okay. So I've got one side clipped. I'm going to do the same thing with the other long raw edge, folding it up. Okay, so now unclip close to the short edges and fold this strap so that the side that does not have the raw edges is right sides together, and open up the short edges, which might mean taking it off its tape, but we're laying our material right sides together along these short edges here. And now let's sew along this short clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have that sewn, you're going to finger press open that seam. If you want to add a little bit more tape here, you can to go over the seam. Let's go ahead and do that since that's what's suggested. I'm just going to cut a small piece of tape. I'm going to flatten out this seam, and I'm just going to run the tape over the seam. That's also going to help keep the seam open. And then remove the paper. And now fold this bit as well, wrong sides together, just like we did the other part of this, with the long edge coming up to meet that middle line. And I'm also going to use clips to help. Okay, so with the raw edge facing out, so the back of the handle facing out, we're going to fold this in half just like this. So right sides coming together, not staying together just for a moment. And we're going to measure 5/8 of an inch to the left of that seam we just made. Okay, so I'm just putting clips here for a moment. We're not going to keep it like this, but we want to fold this whole unit in half just like this. If you want, you can put a small piece of tape right down the middle, not all the way to the ends. I would say my tape is going to be, I'm going to cut a piece of tape that's about 4 inches. And then I'm adding the tape to the back side. Remember, this is the back side of the handle. It has the raw edges. And I'm not going to let it go past, so towards the left of that seam. And it has to be centered. There we go. Now we're going to flip this around so it's wrong sides together. If you need to remeasure, go ahead and do that. So now it should just have like a nice smooth look to your handle. If you need to remeasure over here so that it's 5/8 of an inch, you can do that. Fold everything in. Use some clips to clip these together. If you want to use your tape as well, remove that paper. And just press the handle in half, wrong sides together. Okay, so I'm going to try just removing my clips. I think I'll be okay now. So this is essentially what you have. One side of your handle is just a perfectly smooth material. The other side has that one seam that's about 5/8 of an inch from the side, just like that. Now on the top, which is the side that does not have the seam, so the top here, we're going to measure 3/4 of an inch in from each short edge and just mark a line. Chalk, air erasing, something that's not going to be permanent. And it doesn't have to be a full line. It could be just on the very edges. That's what I'm doing, just little ticks right on the very edge. And now we're going to top stitch along the long edges, but only between the tick marks. So from one tick to the other at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, do a top stitch and do the same thing on the other side. I do like to back stitch at the beginning and the end of each one of these. We are not top stitching the short edges or 3/4 of an inch towards them, okay? Just these long middle edges. Well, that is looking so festive. Okay, so now let's grab your exterior gusset and lay it right side up. And on the right side, again, with some sort of a fabric tool, marking tool that will come off, measure 8 inches in from one of the short edges and make a line. So I have my line going right here. It's my 8-inch line. And then I also like to just kind of fold this in half so I can find the midpoint on my line. So I just pinch it and then I mark another little mark. So I have like a plus sign, which is the midpoint, 8 inches from the left. And then you can use tape if you need to, but I don't think you do. Take your handle, and so that the top side of your handle is right side up, your gusset is right side up, and you're going to just center this right on that line in the midpoint. And since this is a smaller size, it's easy to just kind of eyeball the center. So you're going to center it just like that, and then we're going to make a little rectangle right here, 1/8 of an inch from the short edge, 1/8 of an inch from the longer edges. I honestly just go until I get to the stitching I already made, and then I go down, so I have a little box right here. If you're not going to add a rivet, you can also do an X through this for extra durability, but honestly, I don't imagine anything very heavy being in this bag, so even just a little box here should be fine. All right, that's looking so cute. My box is not straight at all, but that's okay. The variegated thread makes it so you can't really see it. So now we're gonna repeat that for the other side. So on this side over here, the right side, measure in 8 inches and mark a line. Once you have that line marked, you might also find it helpful to just fold the material in half so you can find the midpoint on your line. There we go. And you'll notice this line is further in than the other end of the strap. It's supposed to be because that's how the strap gets its nice little shape. Isn't that sweet? So we're gonna pull this end of the strap up, center it on that mark, and once again, we're going to just top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the unstitched edges, and then just connect the previous stitching so you have a nice little box here. And there we go. Our little handle is attached. If you don't want to add rivets, you don't have to, but I'm going to. So I'm just going to grab this hole punch. This is a great hole punch. And I'm just going to punch a hole right in the center of that little square. You can mark it first if you'd like, or you can just kind of eyeball it. I'm going to do this for the other side as well. And then grab a couple of rivets. And then I'm just going to pop these in there. And then I'm just going to use my rivet press to press these down. All right, once the handle is done, pull the short edges of your gusset up and right sides together and clip those short edges together. And now let's sew along this short clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, if you're going to be doing the magnet, you're going to install the other magnet right over this seam. As you know, I'm not, so I'm just going to move on to the next step. So now what we want to do is find quarter marks for this. So taking the seam you just made, pull along your gusset to straighten it out. We're going to find the midpoint on the other edge. So this is the midpoint of the gusset, and you can use a marking tool or scissors here and mark the midpoint on both sides of the gusset. I know it can be a little tricky to fight that handle. Just do your best. Once you have those midpoints marked, pull the midpoints you just marked right sides together with the seam on the bottom and find the midpoint between those two. So you see seam, midpoint together, and then I'm going to pull along the gusset and pinch, and that gives me the next midpoint mark, and these are our quarter marks. This is going to help with installation in just a moment. So do this for both sides. And once you have your exterior gusset prepped, you're going to prep your lining gusset as well. So take your lining gusset piece and lay it right sides together, clipping these short edges together. And for the lining, we're going to actually sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And now we're going to find our quarter marks the same way we did on the exterior with the lining. So we're just going to pinch this. And I think for this one, I'm actually going to use scissors to cut just itty bitty tiny little triangles right on the corner of my material. That way I don't have to worry about the marks disappearing. So I might go back and do that to the gusset as well for the exterior material. All right, so you can take both of these gussets and put them to the side. And now grab your back panel, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to sew on my bag tag. So if you want, you can go ahead and mark your quarter marks now, because that might actually be helpful with the bag tag. So let's grab our pattern piece, lay it on top of our back panel, grab some sort of a marking tool, and mark your quarter marks. Or you can just fold this in half and mark them that way, whatever's easiest for you. All right, I'm gonna grab a small piece of my double-sided tape, and I'm gonna attach to the back of my bag tag, right in the center so I don't sew over it. Remove the paper. Let's see, and I'm gonna use my ruler and that midpoint mark on the top, and I'm gonna measure down 2 inches and just center my tag just like that. So my bag tag's kind of in the center of the back panel, which I'm happy with. So now I'm going to top stitch around all 4 edges of this at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm going to continue prepping our back panel, and then we'll go back to the gusset. So take your lining and lay your lining and your exterior wrong sides together. So the right side should be on both sides, just like that. Line up all the edges, and I like to clip these together. Okay, now let's baste together the lining and the exterior back panels at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Remember, right sides on both sides. There we go. Now your back panel's all ready to go. All right, the last piece we need to prep is this top front. So you're going to take your little ovally, pointy ovally thing here, and you're going to fold it wrong sides together, matching up those curved edges. And I'm just going to use clips to hold this all together. There we go. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch around all the edges of this at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, once that's top stitched, let's fold it in half, and let's mark the midpoint on the top curved edge. That's where the raw fabric still is. I'm going to use my scissors to, there we go, mark that midpoint. Okay, so this is the step I skipped the first time, so let's see if I can do it right. So grab your gusset that has the handle, this is the exterior gusset, and turn it so it's wrong side out. And we're going to be working on the top where the handle is. And then grab your cover, and whichever side is the right side or wrong side, you're going to have right side of the cover going together with the right side of the gusset. Match up the top middle mark on this curved edge with the midpoint mark underneath the handle. Again, right side of materials together. And let's clip this together. So you can see I'm just kind of shaping the gusset around the flap. Okay, so now we should have something just like this with this little top cover clipped here. We're gonna go baste this together at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. I always like to have the gusset wrong side up when I'm basting something like this. Also, I will be using my zipper foot for the rest of this because zipper feet are just easier to do these curves with. Okay, so now your gusset is ready to go. So grab your exterior gusset, your lining gusset, your back panel, and your front panel. And let's start with the front panel. Lay your front panel right side up. I'm going to move my zippers down just like this. And we're going to attach our gusset right sides to this. So the side that has the flap, that's going to go down against the right side of your material. So it's going to be easier if we work on the quarter marks on the bottom and the sides first. So let's take the bottom of our gusset and right sides together with the bottom of this middle flap. Let's line up the midpoint marks and then clip together. And I always like to clip right at the midpoint mark, and then I add a clip to the left and the right so it doesn't move around on me. So now we're going to go to the side marks. Once again, just clip these together. Don't worry about these sharp corners on the bottom or the corner on the top, the little rounded bit. Don't worry about that just yet. Let's go to the other side. Make sure you keep your zipper pulls out of the way. All right, once you have the side midpoint marks done, let's flip this over so we're looking at the back of the front panel. And we're just going to kind of tuck it in like a bowl as we go around. We're going to clip this together. And we're only going to clip the top edge just past the zipper tape. So we're not going to sew right here. There's no reason to, right? We have a flap here. We don't need to sew that in place. So we're just going to clip up to the zipper tape on both sides. So it might be easier if you actually close your zippers so you know exactly how far this needs to go. So you'll see we'll sew here, but we're not going to sew in the middle right here. There's no reason to do that. So now for the bottom curved bits, these are a little bit trickier. This is where you might want to grab your scissors and make little tiny slits in your gusset, not the front panel, that are about 1/8 of an inch in. And that way you can kind of tuck in this bottom sharp corner and the gusset can spread out around it. And if you need to add more clips, then add more clips. If you need to cut it more, you can cut it more. Just make this as easy as possible. There we go. So you see I have one corner clip just like that. I'm going to do the same thing with the other corner, just making little snips into the gusset so that it can spread out. And then I just tuck in that front panel and add some clips. So the gusset side should look like this. Remember that cover is on that side. It's not over here, right? It's down against the front panel. Flip it over. Here we go. Remember, we're not sewing in between these zipper tape. Okay, so now we're going to sew along the clipped edge at a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. It means it's just under a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like to sew with the gusset side up like this, so that way I kind of push the gusset down out of my way as I go around. Again, a zipper foot's going to make this easier. And once again, just go over the zipper teeth here, but don't go past them. There's no reason to sew past them, okay? I like to cheat here a little bit and just get a little sneak peek. How cute is that? It is so festive. Oh my word. Oh my word, that's so cute. Okay, so now we gotta add the lining. And the reason we do it this way is so that you don't have binding right here. So let's add the lining. So the lining is going to be attached to the back. So lay your front panel so it's lining side up, and then grab your lining gusset and lay your lining gusset so it's wrong side out, right side in. And we're going to start with the bottom, lay our linings right sides together, matching up that middle bottom seam and clip together. And then let's match up the top edge and clip together. Again, this is lining right side down against the right side of the lining for the front panel. And then let's clip our 1/4 marks on the sides. Remember, your lining might be more of a snug fit since we sewed it at a different seam allowance. Okay, so now let's just tuck in this side. So the side that already has the gusset, that's like the bowl side now. So we're gonna kind of tuck it in. See that, how I just kind of push it down like that and I tuck it into my lining gusset. And if you need to add some little snips into the rounded edges of your lining gusset, you can go ahead and do that to make it easier to attach this. And the one thing I found is that this gusset likes to kind of crinkle up. So when you go around, just make sure you pull it out like this. We don't want this gusset that we've already attached to fold in on itself. So just go around and make sure it's good. Okay, so now for the sharp corners, I am going to cut little slits that are about 1/8 of an inch high into my lining gusset. And then I'm just going to kind of smush in that front panel just like that. And again, making sure you're not folding your exterior gusset in any weird way. Do this for the other corner as well. Okay, so now we're going to sew this with the lining gusset wrong side up. So if you need to, you can kind of smush in the other gusset. We're going to go around just like this, sewing at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to sew all the way around this time, so everything together. And again, just kind of keep an eye on this exterior gusset over here because it does like to kind of fold over itself as you're going. And then you have to use your seam ripper and fix it. It's not a big deal, but just do your best to keep that exterior gusset nice and flat underneath. Okay, once you have it sewn, check your exterior gusset side, make sure it's all caught, make sure you don't have anything wild going on. All right, now you can cut off any excess zipper tape you have. Let's get that out of the way now. So cutting off my zipper tape too soon didn't have really any consequences. So if you do it, you're okay. You can still finish this. So now let's flip the exterior. Oh, this looks so good. Wrong sides together with the lining. You see when I open my little zipper, it looks like this. And then I can close it up, tuck it underneath that cover. Oh yeah, that looks so cute, doesn't it? Oh my gosh. Okay, so now let's pull our gussets wrong sides together and line up their raw edges completely. So give it a good pull. And again, just like we were doing before, it's going to be easiest if you match up all of the 1/4 marks first and then match up the rest of the edge. And then as you need to, just kind of pull up on one edge and pull them so that the raw edges meet up and clip around the entire edge of your gusset. You guys, I just can't get over how cute this is. If you have like a Christmas market or something coming up, I don't know if you have time to make these, but if you do, you should definitely add these to your market because it is so cute. So now we're going to baste around this raw edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to hold these gussets together. There we go. Now all we have to do is attach the back panel. Yay! So I like to unzip my zippers about halfway, just like that. And then we're going to flip our front panel so it's lining side out. And we're going to match up the top edge of our gusset with the top edge of our back panel. Exterior material is right sides together. So just like this, you should see lining out completely and all of the exterior material is inside the bag. So let's clip these together. And just like we've been doing, we're matching up all of the 1/4 marks first and clipping around those. And then we do the rounded bits last. Okay, so I'm gonna do the top rounded edges because those are easier and I find I don't need to clip into the gusset at all for that. Remember, I have the back of the back panel, so the lining side of the back panel facing up, and what I do is I just tuck it into my gusset like I'm making a little bowl shape. And now for these sharper corners, I do like to pull the back panel out of the way and just make little snips into my gusset so that it can spread out. And then I can tuck in that corner of the back panel and clip it together. So I'm going to repeat this with the other corner. And once again, we're going to take this to a sewing machine. I'm going to sew it with the gusset side up. This time it's a little bit more challenging because we have to push this out of the way, but I do find that pushing it down out of the way is helpful. I know you don't want to wrinkle it, but you have to. We're going to sew around this clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and again, I do like to use my zipper foot for this. So once you have that sewn together, go around all the edges and make sure it's all mostly even and caught. I will tell you that I had a little bit of a problem over here, but I think I'll be okay. I have a little bit of a shifting on this corner, but when I turn it out, it looks like it's gonna be okay. And we're still gonna add the binding, so that will help correct that as well. So I'm gonna use this pre-made binding. You can use whatever type of binding you like. I always like to use a water-resistant canvas or a waterproof canvas. This is a waterproof Oxford. This is gonna be great as well. You're gonna need about 3/4 of a yard of your binding. So when I attach my binding, I always like to start at the top. I just feel like that's the least noticeable spot. So take your binding so it's right side up, wrong side down, and we're gonna just wrap it around the seam and clip it on there. So when I attach my binding, I always like to attach it to the very top of the bag. I feel like that's the least noticeable spot. So I'm gonna take my binding and with the right side up, wrong side down, I'm just gonna wrap it around the seam and clip in place. And I'm gonna go around the entire bag doing this. Now, if I were to cut a 1-inch wide strip of binding from the same material that I used for the lining, honestly, you don't notice it at all. It's pretty much invisible. However, I actually like when the binding is a different color. I think it gives it a really cool color blocking look, kind of like a 90s vibe. I don't know, I like it. When I come around these sharp corners, I don't do anything fancy. I really do just like smush it around the corner. So this binding is a little wide since our seam was 1/4 inch, and this binding is 1 inch wide. It means it's about 1/2 inch on each side, so it's a little bit bigger than it needs to be. But I always find that 1-inch binding is just the easiest to work with, and it's the easiest to cut. If you're making your own binding, you can cut 3/4 inch strips, but it can be a little tricky to cut long strips that are just 3/4 of an inch wide. So we're gonna continue all the way to our starting point. I'm always just looking at the front and back to try to make sure they're, for the most part, even. Once I get to my starting point, I let it overhang by about 1 inch or so, and then I cut the binding, lift the clip for the starting point, and then just cover the beginning with the end of the binding and clip together just like that. So now we're gonna go to the machine and we're gonna just sew the binding on at 1/4 inch seam allowance, just going all the way around. I like to use a top stitching length for this, and just go slow. Again, use your stiletto, and this should help clean up any little kind of jagged edges you made sewing when you were attaching the gusset to the back. Once you have the binding attached, just look at the back and make sure you caught everything. You don't have like a big chunk that didn't get caught, and look at the front. And I know whenever you look at the binding right now, it's like, that looks messy. I know, but just wait, just wait. So now we're going to turn this bag right side out. Oh, this is the most exciting part. So turn it out and then push all of the seams out. Really want to get that nice shape. And that's the nice thing about binding, is that once you push this out, the binding is right here. Do you see how perfect of a shape that is? The binding is going to make sure it stays that way too. I mean, just the foam and the binding together is a beautiful combination. So I'm going to zip up my zippers. Look at how adorable that is. And my little Santa Claus and my little reindeer. Oh my goodness. This is such a cute little bag. And so when you open it up, let me show you. You see, you don't even notice the binding at all. It's just not something that you see at all. So it's great. I love binding. You guys. It's so cute. Look at this. Look at them together. Oh, but look at this. I'm saying, I know we're probably done with holiday markets, and if you were selling things at a holiday market, you probably have already made everything and you're done, but maybe next year. This is adorable. So here, I've got some Hershey's Kisses. And I'm just gonna fill it up. Fill it up with some festive treats. Oh, this is just the best idea. It's the best idea. So look, I've got all, it smells so good. I've got this full of kisses, and I think these are like sugar cookie kisses. I haven't tried them yet. But then you fill it up. How cute is that? If you could make one of these for all the little kids at your social get together this year for Christmas, I mean, put a little gift card in there, a bunch of little treats. This is the most adorable little pouch ever. I mean, for me, they're my treat pouches because these are so cute. But if you were going on a retreat or you're going on vacation, maybe you're traveling to see family and you want to bring some crafts with you, maybe some hand sewing things, I would actually use this for cross stitching. I could put all of my little cross stitching floss holders in here and all of my, equipment, and then I could just have another bag with my hoop. I mean, this is just so stinking adorable. I absolutely love this. So if you've already made one of these, let me know in the comments below. If you've posted on social media, tag me. I really want to see your version because I want to make 1,000 more of these. These are so fun. If you haven't given it a shot, I hope you will. It is a great skill builder pattern, which is kind of the point of it. You are going to learn some curves, some gussets, things like that, but you're not going to use a lot of material. A lot of times when we're doing these sharp curves and these gussets, we're making a big bag, and it is kind of disappointing if it doesn't go the way you want and you kind of wasted all your favorite material. I do, again, suggest, especially if you're starting out, foam or Decoville Light and quilt cotton, okay? Quilt cotton is going to be your friend here. It's going to make it a lot easier to get around these curves versus like a vinyl or something, which could be pretty challenging. Now, if you have a lot of experience, then go ahead and make your vinyl version. I'm still debating if I want to do a vinyl version or not. I'm just so happy with how this turned out. And because of what we would use it for, it really doesn't need to be super durable, like a purse, you know? This is probably not something that's going to be dragged on the floor or anything like that. So, yeah, this is a fun one to play with your quilt cotton. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Again, thank you so much to Sewn Ideas for allowing me to use your patterns on my channel. They are one of my favorite pattern designers. Go check them out if you haven't already. Check out some of the other videos we've done for them. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.